The Baliwick loses its rudder on its way during the Bermuda ocean race. Do they abandon ship or do they sail her in? This is the Sailor's Debrief. Stay tuned and find out. Today we're videotaping from the St. Croix International Regatta.
Get ready for a massive roll-up. Think about a candy bar. Right there. Let's go.
Today our objective is to analyze this incident so you can figure out how to steer your boat without a rudder. First, let's listen to the opinion of Michael Keyworth. Michael Keyworth is an accomplished skipper, thousands upon thousands of ocean racing miles, and he is a safety at sea expert who has perfected steering a vessel with a drogue.
Concerned about a couple of the issues, the most important of which is what happens if a boat loses its rudder. How would you steer the boat? How would you get back to a safe harbor? And as it turns out, there have been many boats that have been abandoned at sea because the crew could not get them back to the safe harbor.
The Baliwick is a very well-maintained blue jacket sloop. She had 5 souls on board. Many of them had safety at sea certificates, but most importantly, they had decades and decades of ocean racing experience. In 2018, on June 19th, during the Bermuda ocean race at 23:35, suddenly the Baliwick hears a very loud bang. The helm immediately reports that they don't have any steering. It was like a shotgun, and everybody heard the loud bang. Instantaneous and sudden, there was no steering. If we take a look at the yellow brick tracker, often utilized for tracking boats during ocean voyages, we can see the exact moment that the Baliwick lost its rudder. 5 minutes later, the crew has proven that the vessel is still watertight. No water's coming in, so the integrity of the hull is still in good shape. They put on their personal flotation devices, their life vests, their tethers, hooked into jack lines, and also into the hard points that were provided on the vessel. At midnight, the start of a new day, with hope on the horizon that they might be able to steer this vessel with a drogue, they deploy a 36-inch gale rider. The gale rider has 2 spinnaker lines attached to it. They're going to utilize that to steer the vessel. Unfortunately, due to the rotation of the drogue, the lines got tangled up and it didn't work. The drogue twisted its way all the way back to the stern of the vessel. Here we can see just exactly how to deploy a drogue for steering. First, you need to attach the blocks to midships. You do this in order to get leverage to turn the vessel. The lines are attached to a bridle, then to a swivel, then a chain, and then you carefully pay out the drogue, which is attached to the end of the chain. Once deployed, you can use the lines to pull the drogue to one side of the vessel or the other side to utilize for steering the vessel. On a side note, please remember that you can also use a drogue like a basket attached to a halyard. You're going to have the ability to pick up a person who might find themselves in a crew overboard situation. According to the regulations, the team met the letter of the law. They had practiced and proven that the drogue does work on their vessel when they align it properly and they can use the lines to steer the vessel. However, the conditions that they practiced this in was not necessarily conditions that they would be experiencing during the Bermuda ocean race. Because the forces of the drogue were greater than what was practiced, the drogue worked its way and twisted all the way back to the stern of the vessel. After more than 1 hour of retrieving the drone and untangling all the twists, they were able to redeploy the drone to try it again for a second attempt. Most unfortunately, once again, the drogue twisted all the way back to the transom, all the way into the prop. At first light on the morning of the 20th, a crew member donned a mask, put on a safety harness, they dove underneath the vessel. Immediately they saw that the rudder had been sheared off at the hull. After a few quick breaths, some effort with a knife, and the mask, they were able to free the line from its entanglement in the propeller. Never give up. Never, never, never give up. That's rule number 8, folks. Rule number 8 in racing is never give up. Please remember that as you try things. What they did now at 0800 is they took their whisker pole, they pinned some screwdrivers onto it because they didn't have screws long enough to go all the way through, lashed them on with a whisker pole, and they created themselves a modified tiller. Although every vessel has an emergency tiller, without a rudder this wasn't going to work. However, in this case, the tiller was used to lash on their emergency tiller that they just created using the whisker pole. It provided the ability to rotate left and right, provide some stability, and use as a fulcrum or an attachment point for their newly rigged steering mechanism. The tiller attempt version 1 worked, but it did need some adjustments. After sailing about 20 miles, and they were able to readjust some of the loads by putting spinnaker lines back onto the ends of the tiller. Version 2.0 of the tiller only had one problem. There was some buoyancy still left into the whisker pole. The heaving action of each wave would make the tiller go up and down, and that stressed the emergency tiller that they had. Their fear with the emergency tiller is it either snap off the pressure right at the neck or break off the bearings of the steering of the running post. Either way, it was going to be an additional emergency. The only way to circumvent that pressure was to have somebody continually sitting onto the emergency tiller. For the next 90 miles, the team took turns sitting on the tiller. Imagine that. During your crew watch, you had to add a new station, sit on top of the tiller for as long as you can take, until you couldn't take it any longer.
It's a nice, lovely, 4 to 6 foot deep seas. That is our rudder.
For the next 90 miles, the crew took turns riding on top of the tiller. They rode that all the way to Kitchen Shoals just outside of Bermuda, and that's where their rescue vessel was able to meet them. So yes, they didn't abandon ship. They were able to get the vessel on their own power to safety, then to meet the rescue vessel. All too often we hear stories about sailors who abandon their vessel because they lose a rudder. They are ill-prepared if they don't have a mechanism or a proven mechanism to understand how to steer a vessel without a rudder, to at least get it closer to a proximity where you can minimize the risk of sailors. And not only that, but minimizing the risk of those people that might go out hundreds of miles to risk their own lives just to save you. Now let's look at some lessons learned for this sailor's debrief of the Baliwick. First of all, I think the crew did an absolutely fantastic job. They didn't have long enough screws, they didn't have a long enough drill bit, but those are kind of minor, they were able to figure that out. Although the crew did practice the use of a drogue, I wouldn't necessarily say that they had proven how well it works in the right conditions. Their practice was Fisher Sound and about 2 to 3 knots of wind. Those are not necessarily the types of conditions that one would be expecting for the Bermuda ocean race. I would really like to applaud the crew because the lessons learned I think for everybody is before they tried doing any damage control, they first put on their PFDs and they tied themselves in. They made themselves safe first as a priority. This actually ended up working very well because during a mishap, while the boat was being heaved when it did not have control, as a person was standing on the deck trying to lash down the sails, they slipped and they hurt themselves. However, folks, if they were not tied in, this would have been a man overboard situation. The crew also did a fantastic job using their satellite communicator to get a hold of the Rescue Coordination Center in Bermuda. Because of that, they were able to relay the messages that they were okay, despite the fact that their radio and their AIS were a little fuzzy or out of commission. They had a redundancy built into the communication system. Independent testing since this incident has shown us that a regular anchor swivel without ball bearings will often lead to the twisting of a drogue. A drogue will twist its lines all the way back to the transom, just like the Baliwick experienced. It's important to understand that for the drogue steering to work, you're going to need to test it. You're going to have to make sure that your swivel has ball bearings in it, is greased, and well maintained. This is where General Patton comes in. A lifelong sailor, in 1926, General George S. Patton actually received from the U.S. Coast Guard a Medal of Honor for life-saving. General Patton, alongside of his wife, rescued 3 sailors that were in the water while they were off the coast of Massachusetts 2 years earlier. His wife was also a star champion sailor in Hawaii in the 1930s. General Patton, his wife, his son, and many guests sailed all the way from California to Hawaii when he was transitioning from the base in California to Hawaii, when he took over command of one of the battalions in the 25th Infantry Division. That's the same division as a sailor I served in. What do we learn for General Patton? It's pretty easy. His quote was really important when it came to training soldiers. He who sweats more in training bleeds less in battle. That's right. This means as sailors, we really need to practice under realistic conditions. The final lessons learned from the Baliwick is, in order for emergency tiller to work, it needs to be as vertical as possible in order to withstand the loads that some of the waves are going to be producing and the winds in 5 to 10, even 15 or 20 knots. I think your greatest payoff for watching this video is to understand that even if you do lose a rudder, you have hope. There are many different ways to sail a vessel without a rudder, so you don't have to abandon your ship. It's going to be safer for the crew too, as long as you get closer to shore if you're miles or even thousands of miles away. With the Safety at Sea certificate that's provided by many of the organizing authorities throughout the world, you'll learn some of these techniques. With a proper understanding of World Sailing's offshore special regulations, you can use this as a checklist to go through your boat to ensure that you have the right tools that are recommended for offshore sailing. I think it's important to train for adversity with redundancy, but also don't give up the ship. Please subscribe, please like, and please ring the bell.